Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday the 6th of December 2016 and my name is David Kameh, and today I woke up to hear on the news that Twitter, Facebook, Google attending EU anti-extremist meeting. Another example of big government working in cahoots with big corporations with a view to consolidating their position, to clamping down on your freedoms. Because, of course, the extremist or extremism will be what they define it to be. And that will be anything that is not following their communitarian, anti-mankind, anti-God, so-called middle road, or whatever it is they call it, the centre ground they call it. Another things I saw in the news today, headlines for example in the Daily Mail: bank chief, robots to steal 15 million of your jobs. Okay, doom-laden Carney, the Bank of England governor, the big private bank, of course, doom-laden Carney warns middle classes will be hollowed out, to use his term, ladies and gentlemen, by new technology. And then you go through the paper and you see, for example, that quangos are making a fortune out of your tax money, and so are all sorts of big businesses, all huddling with government, all with a view to them getting together at your expense. It's fascism. Definition of fascism, ladies and gentlemen, is of course government working in cahoots with big corporations, big business. And then, of course, we've got the whole Brexit thing and all the shenanigans and the deceit associated with that. What it means, Brexit, of course, is out of the EU, totally out of the EU. And then you go from there. But, of course, we have all the shenanigans going on, the undermining going on. The undermining is one, and the subversion is something that I've talked about before. But as you can see behind me, there are lights. We are in a festive season, so I'm going to read you a poem, ladies and gentlemen. It comes from Tennyson. He wrote a very long poem called In Memoriam, consider it because his friend died. And it's a very nice poem, ladies and gentlemen, from a very long time ago, the 1800s. And here's one of the last bits of it, or section of it, and it's called New Year's Eve. And it is quite festive. It fits in with my lights quite nicely. And also, it's a sort of antidote to what I've just read there. Oh, by the way, I want to say one more thing. I just want to emphasise this. 15 million of your jobs will be hollowed out by new technology. And if you read my book, ladies and gentlemen, if you read the book God Makes His Move, you will see what technology is. It's about destroying mankind, and we really have to stop submitting to it. It goes into it in great detail, so please do download the copy or buy a copy of God Makes His Move. You can download the PDF from davidkameh.com actually. There are links on the Common Law Nations website, and download it and do the search, find technology, look into it, research it. It's an extremely dangerous thing, and it is intended as part of the overall plan, if you want to call it that. You might call it the mesh. Look up the chapter called The Mesh, and the overall way we are going. That's what this technology is. It will be about destroying lives, not just jobs, about nations, about your connection with God through Christ as well, of course. That's the main aim, if you will, of all of this whole motion that's being set against us. Anyway, like I said though, it is a festive season. It is the time to think about Christ's birth and his importance. And again, if you want to get some sort of reference points as far as Christ is concerned, read God Makes His Move. You can download the PDF totally free, so you don't have to commit yourself, but it'd be good if you bought the book. But the thing is, read it. Read about Christ and his position. And read about all of that in relation to government, and see how it all fits together. And how important it is for us to have this overview right now. But anyway, we've got the festive lights, and we've got a rather festive poem. So back to that poem as an antidote to all this stuff. To all this Facebook, Twitter and so on all getting together, and all these and increasing the NATO amounts to pay and all of it. So let's get on with this. The New Year, it's called New Year's Eve by Alfred Lord Tennyson. That's his name, isn't it? I should know. I studied it at A-level. All of his stuff. Well, just call him. Yes, Alfred Lord Tennyson, ladies and gentlemen. He wrote some splendid poems. Anyway, here we go. It's not very long, but bear with me. What I'm going to do is read it straight through first, then I'm going to read it again and comment on it. Okay, here it goes. A little clearing of the throat and ring out. Ring out wild bells to the wild sky. The flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out wild bells and let him die. Ring out the old, ring in the new. Ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let him go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that hear we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Ring in redress to all mankind. Ring out a slowly dying cause and ancient forms of party strife. Ring in the nobler modes of life with sweeter manners, purer laws. Ring out the want, the care, the sin, the faithless coldness of the times. Ring out my mournful rhymes, but ring the fuller minstrel in. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old. Ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Ring in the valiant man and free, the larger heart, the kindlier hand. Ring out the darkness of the land. Ring in the Christ that is to be. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That really hit me very hard, actually. It's a wonderful little piece. And, of course, the theme of it, you know, the problems they were having in those days, very similar to now. But now is the real turning point. But let's just quickly go through it. This first part. So the first part, ring out the wild bells to the wild sky, the flying cloud and the frosty light. Obviously, you know, it's the end of the year, giving you that flavour. The year is dying in the night, ring out wild bells and let him die. It's probably also talking about his friend, you know, about him letting his friend go, because the whole of In Memoriam was about his friend, Hallam, I think his name was, who died. And really did cause quite an effect on him. So that's the first one, sets the scene. Next one, ring out the old, ring in the new. Okay, that sounds good. Up to a point. Because, do you know what? A lot of the old stuff's far better than the new, isn't it? But we know what he means. He's talking about getting rid of something very dark and horrible that has now aged. But let's continue. Ring out the old, ring in the new. Ring happy bells across the snow. That's quite nice. You can imagine the sleigh and all that, can't you? It's quite visual. I quite like it. Now let's move on. The year is going, let him go. Yes, indeed. It's an extraordinary year it was, wasn't it? 2016, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be even more extraordinary, I would suggest, for 2017. But nevertheless, ring out the false, ring in the true. And you can think about that in the context of ring out the old, ring in the new. Because it's time to ring out the false. How much falsehood do we have to have? How much falsehood? Robots taking people's lives. How much falsehood is that? That's false, ladies and gentlemen. It's false creation. It's not man living, it's machines living, parasitizing on mankind. All this stuff about Brexit, all the lies to do with it, all the shenanigans. Ring out the false and ring in the true. We are at that turning point, ladies and gentlemen. So much truth is coming out. So much is being revealed. The thing is, of course, it's being parasitized upon as ever by what I would call the divide. Read my book, God Makes His Move, and you'll understand what I mean. So that's what's happening, you know. So we have to be very careful when the truth is out, because what's happening to it? Take Brexit, for example. It gets taken to the side and tramline sent down a blind alley. So we've got to really ring out that false, get rid of it and bring in the true. But anyway, here we go. Next one. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. And it does indeed, doesn't it? All this misery that's going on around us, and all this, these people who focus on it and just talk about the horrible stuff all the time. You know, don't look into the abyss too much lest you become it. Obviously, we've got to be aware of what's going on, haven't we? So we can manoeuvre and recognise the situation. But there is, as far as I'm concerned, far too much focusing on what is happening, all the bad stuff, all the time. That's happening, they're doing that, that's a conspiracy behind that, that's this and so on. It's all very well knowing that, but focusing on it, it's not a good idea, is it? It's rather, and it grieves us, doesn't it, to see the world falling in this way, to see our cultures and falling, to see our relationship with God being attacked and assailed, to see our nations being overwhelmed. It grieves us to see our skies being sprayed with aluminium salts. It grieves us to see our waters poisoned. Yes, all these things grieve us. The diseases and so on that are being introduced to us, the controls that are being put upon us. It grieves us. It renders us weak. But the thing is, we've got to stop thinking about that, and we've got to start thinking about what we can do and what we will do. So ring out the grief that saps the mind. I think it also saps your energy, saps your soul, as it were. And it goes on to say, for those that hear, we see no more. Well, of course, there is something connected with it, isn't it? I saw somebody today and you think, wow, you know, that is the sort of woman I used to see in this country. It reminds me of my past. My past and my culture and my country and the families that are associated with it have been overwhelmed by this global initiative to take over mankind and to steer it towards a very, very dark place indeed. So those that we see no more, they're becoming less and less. Our cultures are being destroyed. But of course, Alfred Lord Tennyson was writing about his friend Hallam, who died. Those that, you know, we see no more. But that's relevant to all of us. Most of us this year have known someone who's died, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, but we got to ring it out. Ring out. As in ring the bells out, the grief that sapped the mind for those that hear and know. Come on, we've got to lift ourselves up. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Yes, indeed, there is this massive feud of rich and poor. It's been going on for centuries. Greedy people, ladies and gentlemen. People who take advantage of people. Men and women who take advantage of other men and women. Men and women who just want to squeeze as much as they can out of somebody. And then, of course, you've got the reaction against that, you know, the dialectic. So you've got the big government that allegedly protects the worker. Well, of course, it doesn't. It controls the worker. The only way you can protect the worker, here we go. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Yes, indeed, it's time for that, isn't it? Isn't it time to see everybody healthy and well and having the fruits of their labour? Ring in redress to all mankind. Yes, indeed. It is time to start applying the law, ladies and gentlemen. The common law. Some people say the common law is for the common man. Well, it is in a way. It certainly is. It should be available to the ordinary man and woman to go just down the road to a court and sort out straight away a problem. Straight away, injustice. So ring in redress to all mankind. Mankind has been so destroyed, ladies and gentlemen, so overwhelmed. We are also to blame because we have fallen for the lies. We have been sold all the stuff that we don't really want. The technology and so on. The attitudes. The rebellion. We need that redress. It's a massive job. That's why it's not just going to be us who do it, ladies and gentlemen. There is going to be this divine intervention, which I talk about. You know, the epiphania, it's very clear. I talked about that also in the book. Anyway, let's move on. Ring out a slowly dying cause. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. And the context of this? Here we go. Ring out a slowly dying cause and ancient forms of party strife. So, from this dying cause, the dying cause as far as I'm concerned is this globalism, the way it's being applied right now, this internationalism, this corporate internationalism, this communitarianism with fascism at the top, communism at the bottom, no borders between anything, no structure, nothing, just a weakened people controlled by a very tiny elite with a plan to reduce population by up to 95%. That's the cause. It's globalism. Take a look in the newspapers. There are some good things. You see the rise of the populism. My concern, of course, is that whilst it's a good vehicle for sentiment of people, and whilst it's good to see people wanting their nations back and their cultures back, we really do have to begin to work towards spreading the idea that it's got to be in the true context, which of course is in the context of the true law, God's law through Christ. Anyway, so ring out a dying cause, the whole globalism cause, the whole internationalist man is God cause is dying. There is a resurgence of interest in true spirituality. They cite that people aren't going to churches. Well, they're not, no, because they're finding out the truth of the Bible, for example. So, and you don't need these churches that are rooted in connections with communism and communitarianism, connections with government and so on. There is a big positive turnaround. Anyway, ring out a slowly dying course and ancient forms of party strife. Yes, indeed. The whole dialectic, you could say that is, the problem, reaction, the solution. You create one thing, create its antidote in order to get to another position. You look at the parties, political parties. I also write about them in my book, so download that. Look up political parties. The whole idea of political parties is a disgrace. It's about salesmen. You know, these politicians, they're salesmen. They're selling you ideas when the thing is the law is set. And the law provides society with a very smooth structure within which to run. Or framework within which to run. You don't need political parties, ladies and gentlemen. Man is quite capable of doing his work in his way according to the law. What is the problem is these people selling their ideologies, these political parties, and you buying into it, and then, or not you, all of us, we've all done it, and then they run away with the power. You've granted them the power, and you think you're okay being looked after, and they're working behind the scenes to get more power, more money and so on behind your back. We don't need political parties, ladies and gentlemen. Ultimately, as the Bible says, there will be a king, there will be true law. We see that in the kingdom of God, which is that 490-year aeon, as I talk about also in the book. You can see it on the website as well. Both websites. Links to it from the Common Law Nations Alliance website, and links to it also on the davidkamay.com website. So, Kings, true government. This is what we must begin to work for and towards, and of course that's based in law, and that means rule of law, and that means the same law for everybody. No one, not even the king, is beneath the law. So, ring out, yes, get out a slowly dying cause. Yes, get out this globalism, get out and the ancient forms of party strife. Yes, get out, leave us alone. Let us work and live according to the law, according to sound and true government, and we won't really have to worry about too much, and leave our nations alone. We need to protect our borders. all these are just part of the natural order. You don't need ideologies to undermine the natural order, this party strife. You know, the party strife is like watching tennis. You keep watching the ball, you don't look at the sky, sort of thing. Not a great analogy, ladies and gentlemen, but you know, some of these things just have to come off the cuff. Anyway, ring in the nobler modes of life. So, we've got the feud of rich and poor, and we need the redress of mankind. And then we've got the dying cause and the party strife. And then it says, ring in the nobler modes of life. Of course, this is the root. This is the root of our saving or taking part in improving things in the world. Helping prepare for that epiphany, that divine intervention, that true government. Nobler forms of life. If everybody held their position, had absolute integrity as much as they could, and of course all of us has fallen, but nevertheless we can aim for absolute integrity. Nobler modes of life. We wouldn't have the problems that we have now. As it says here, with sweeter manners, purer laws. Now, wouldn't that be good, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, that sums it up. Ring in the nobler modes of life with sweeter manners, purer laws. If we started working on that, we are really preparing for something very, very good indeed. And that thing is coming. And it's got to be grounded. And it's got to be men and women like you and me out there preparing for it and ready for it. And even if it doesn't come within our lifetimes, ladies and gentlemen, at least we set it in motion. But I believe we're not too far from it at all. Anyway, let's go on to the next part here. Stanza, I think they're called. Ring out the want, the care, the sin. Yes, indeed. These things will go when people, men and women, start to work and live according to what is right, which is according to God's law through Christ, which is implemented at the moment through the common law. Common law is, of course, God's law implemented by man's common sense and reason, or I should say God's law through Christ, always that, implemented through man's common sense and reason. So man takes a part, so it's grounded and rooted. And it's associated with individual situations, not a big global homogenized plan. So ring out the want, the care, the sin. That's a great thought. You know, when you watch you probably, I don't know if you're going to watch it. There's, you know, Dickens and Christmas Carol. The book is very, very funny. If you want to read the book, it's got some hilarious parts in it, like the coach and eight being able to go. It's such a wide staircase that the coach and eight can go up it sideways in Scrooge's house. That, to me, ladies and gentlemen, brings a smile to my face. But in that story, isn't there the child of want and care or something? I think they're with the spirit of Christmas present. I think that's the one. But yeah, ring out the want, the care, the sin. The faithless coldness of the times. So they had it then, but do you know what? In Victorian times, they weren't faithless in relation to what we are now. They look on us now as an absolute disgrace, the way things are now. Good thing is, of course, there is a resurgence to a true understanding of faith. And it's understandable that people have moved away from faith in the Christian church, for example, because it's been parasitized upon. It's been socialized, as in part of, as in having social codes and so on. It's cut itself away from God's true authority. through Christ. It's been emasculated. That's certainly true. The structure has gone. It's like cutting the tent poles in half. The whole tent falls down. But yes, ring out the want, the care, the sin, the faithless coldness of the times. Ring that out. The faithless coldness. And it is cold. It is faithless. People aren't warm anymore. At least far less of them are. People aren't caring. People are frightened, looking over their shoulder all the time. People have lost their sense of perspective. They have lost their sense of true authority. They think government and man rules over them. No, the sovereign is God through Christ, ladies and gentlemen. And when we have that faith, we're going to live a lot more happily, and we're going to be a lot more confident, and we're going to be a lot more upright. Anyway, ring out my mournful rhymes. Yeah, get rid of these mourning and the moaning and the newspapers. I'm guilty of it as well, ladies and gentlemen. But it is time to start focusing, which is what I am doing, on far more positive things. Not just the things, but also doing positive things. And how to do them. Anyway, ring out my mournful rhymes, but ring the fuller minstrel in. There you go. Now, next one. Ring out false pride. False pride in place and blood. You know, those who've got their puffed up positions in their places, their positions, the false pride to do with that. To do with these governments that are working at different levels, of course, with corporations against your interests. And they're puffed up because they look down on you, because they can see the bigger picture, because they have secret meetings. They've had their positions. Ring out false pride in place and also blood. Yes, indeed. Who are these people who think they're exalted because of their blood? You hear people talking about master races. You hear people talking about all these ridiculous things, about chosen races and so on. But it's very clear in the Bible, Galatians, I think, where it says that everybody is the seed of Abraham as long as they recognise Christ, they're going through Christ. Whoever they are the seed of Abraham. Genetics doesn't take any part of it anymore. It's a true spiritual shift when you have your connection with God through Christ. No longer do we have all these factions. And the false pride that's to do with these lineages, these bloodlines and so on, and these positions. Because the true authority is, of course, God through Christ to you. That's the line. That's the spiritual line that it goes. And everybody in that area is equal. They are all the seed of Abraham. Anyway, ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Plenty of that, isn't there? And it's difficult not to get involved with it. And I realise I've got involved with that. You say nasty things, things come a bit strongly. It is time to stop that sort of thing. Ring it out. Ring in the love of truth and right. Yes, indeed. But it is coming in, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? The love of truth and the love of right. I love that right. As in what's correct. As in what's good. Because so many of us now are even thinking that there is no right and there is no wrong through all these common purpose courses when you're being taught all this relativism nonsense. When ultimately nothing exists. So the love of truth and right. The truth and right. Truth has form. It is real. Things are real and exist. And there is right and there is wrong. And we must not tolerate what is wrong. And we must encourage and build up what is good. So ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Yes, indeed. How lovely is that? To have the common love of good. The common good. It's a wonderful thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's a thing that we've all looked towards in our sadder moments. Ring out old shapes of foul disease. Yeah, you know, through the bad nutrition that we've had over the centuries, through the poisoning, through all the industrialisation, yes, through all the lack of understanding because the people have been prevented from getting knowledge, yes, all this foul disease. It's everywhere. But there's disease being put upon us now, isn't there? In the vaccines. I know somebody, an old man, he had a vaccine, a flu vaccine, the other day, ladies and gentlemen. About 2 weeks ago. And what's happened now? He's 85. What's happened now? He can hardly talk, can hardly walk. He's got the flu. This is all part of it. The poisoning, the vaccines with the viruses in them, the spraying of the skies with aluminium and barium salts, and they keep going on about the poisons from cars when they're doing it, spraying the skies, when they're filling our water with things like fluoride and chlorine, when they're encouraging us with one hand to have sugar and telling us not to have it with the other, and so on and so on and so on. So ring out old shapes of foul disease, because when we get to this situation, which is the kingdom of God, which is 490 years long, which does actually precede the millennium, which is when Christ returns, this is an extremely good time when we're going to be able to repair the world. You know, we might be concerned about those little bits of plastic in the sea. It will be repaired. It will be repaired, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to be prepared to be able to repair. Anyway, and don't forget, those who are alive in the Aeon, which is that 490-year kingdom of God, will certainly not die in the Aeon or beyond. They will be transformed people. That's the true born again. You can't be born again, as they say in these churches now. That's not what it is. The true born again is this regeneration from above. Okay? And that's for the believers in the Aeon, in the kingdom of God. And it's an extraordinary thing. I can't explain what it is, but it's wonderful. Beyond all measure that we can understand at the moment. Let us move on, ladies and gentlemen. So ring in the love of truth and right, ring out old shapes of foul disease. Yes, indeed. We've got to start thinking that it can be done. The old diseases can go. Everything can go. Nutrition and not being poisoned should be right at the front of our minds. We don't need to focus on all this dementia and Alzheimer's that we've been told permanently to focus on. Or the cancer. We've got to start thinking it can be stopped. What's the cause? We will have life. Life is important. Good life, healthy life. Anyway, ring out old shapes of foul disease. Ring out the narrowing lust of gold. Well, that fits in with all this disease, doesn't it? Who makes money out of all this disease? Of these people who become just pods, money-making pods. They get their pills regularly, so the big pharma makes the money. But the narrowing lust of gold, I think it fits in to this, with the line, ring out the feud of rich and poor, ring in redress to all mankind. And then you've got those nice lines after it, when it talks about the nobler modes of life, sweeter manners and purer laws. And so, of course, you know, the lust for gold narrows everything. So you don't have the nobler modes of life, the sweeter manners, purer laws, the redress of mankind. But it's also connected to all the disease. You know, that love of money, that lust of gold, and then all the usury and the Ponzi schemes that go with it. Because that lust is so potent, it drives them to breaking the law and to have fraud after fraud after fraud. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old. That makes sense, doesn't it? Think of all these wars that have been going on, all these feuds that have been going on for so long, ladies and gentlemen. Ring out the 1,000 wars of old, ring in the 1,000 years of peace. The 1,000 years of peace, of course, is it doesn't quite last 1,000 years actually, but is the millennium, isn't it? It's when Christ returns. The millennium, Christ King here in this world. That happens after the kingdom of God, after the 490-year kingdom, which I don't think is too far around the corner. So, ring out the 1,000 wars of old. Yes, indeed, we shall do that. And this will come in with people standing more upright and having the right manners, having the strength to hold their ground, having the strength and courage to stand their ground and hold their ground against all these corporations, and to know how important it is to be a man who has a relationship with God through Christ, and how important it is to have a government here in this world that is in that line of authority: God, Christ, government, and then man. But of course the spiritual line is more direct, isn't it? It's man, Christ, God. Okay, so ring out the 1,000 wars of old, ring in the 1,000 years of peace. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, these are things to focus on when you've got your Christmas tree lights up. Yes? Okay, ring in the valiant man and free. Yes, indeed, the valiant man and free, and woman, of course. The ones who can hold their ground. The ones who have taken the time out to know the law, so that they're not pushed around anymore. And that they can do that, holding their ground, without upsetting those who are trying to push them about. So, you know, this is truly valiant. If you're able to do that, hold your ground in this world, not be pushed about, and yet to hold your integrity and hold your reason. It's difficult, but it's certainly something for us to aim for, isn't it? Ring in the valiant man and free. Yes, because if you hold your ground using, for example, the common law, using the Bible, that's the first precedent. That's where all our laws in the common law nations come from. Use it. You're going to be free if you use it properly and skillfully. And you hold your ground, as it says in Ephesians. Hold your ground. Ring in the valiant man and free. The larger heart, the kindlier hand. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Good time to practice that is at Christmas time, isn't it? With the lights that like those behind me. Okay. Ring out the darkness of the land. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. The whole land across the entire world is covered in darkness at the moment. It's also covered in chemtrails. Ring in the Christ that is to be. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. And ring in that 490-year aeon. Ring in the epiphania. These are things that should be right there on the tip of our tongue. Ring in the practice of the common law. Ring in the understanding of the importance of having your nation intact, your borders intact, your industries intact. So there you are, a little bit of festive message from me, David Kamay, at the Common Law Nations Alliance. Now, if you want to protect yourself and your family, your nation and your culture, and to do what's right and help prepare for one of the greatest times in history, then please join the Common Law Nations Alliance. We need funds, ladies and gentlemen, so this can have some real impact. And so please do join. You'll find the way to join on the Common Law Nations Alliance website. And also, if you've got some spare cash, donate. And again, it will be used to help promote this entire message, to help do something, to help educate, but also to do something according to that education, to help bring people together, but also help bring people together not just to sit and watch, but also to do something. That's what the Common Law Nations Alliance is about, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, there you go. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sure I shall be speaking to you before Christmas, but make sure that you are enjoying the festivities and that you get your decorations up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I shall speak to you soon.